Now we are watching energy follow focus. So she has her focus, I have my focus, and those are separate, but they're also together in space, and we're watching energy move through that focus. Hey y'all, Craig here, Subtle Energy Mechanics. Today we're going to talk about this energetic thing, especially if you're one of these people that has access to a huge amount of energy, seemingly, or you're highly sensitive, or maybe you're neurodiverse and you experience a different world than other people seem to, and you spend a lot of energy trying to manage a lot of energy, such as your body is super sensitive, and if you just let her fly, you would just be walking down the street all over the place and you'd be kind of crazy. So you spend a lot of energy trying to manage that, trying to tamp it down. So I was reading about well, actually, I was listening to Heidi Priebe, who's one of my favorite people to listen to on here about, well, managing trauma and PTSD and complex PTSD and attachment stuff. And her name's, again, Heidi Priebe, and Priebe, and I'll put her contact info down here and her YouTube info in the description if I remember. But she was talking about neurosis, and I think a lot of us can feel neurotic and maybe have had other people tell us that we're neurotic, and maybe that makes sense. Maybe you identify with being neurotic, especially when you're living inside this body that's super highly sensitive, and you look around like nobody else seems to be living this way. So then we go on a search, like, what am I? What's going on? How can I live an easier, less neurotic life? Because other people have the option of just turning around and not spending time with you, and they can just be free of you. But you don't have that option. You wake up in the morning and you're like already jacked up from being emotionally exhausted from the dreams you just had. So let's look at this from an energetic point of view, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, I'm not gonna be the disclaimer, I'm not talking about diagnoses and helping to manage or reduce the suffering with these particular diagnoses, but what happens when you're an energetically sensitive person and you don't know what's going on, and maybe how would you manage a spiritual awakening or a kundalini awakening if it were happening to you? Now, if it's a part of what I'm going to do with this video is take a fair bit of time at this in the second half of the video with showing actual live clips with me working with somebody else so that you can watch. You can watch somebody else's spine and body, and you can watch me and the space, and just in the watching and listening to me talk about it can actually help your body organize its own energetic response to itself and to the energetic field around you. Because from the body's perspective, there really may not be a difference between the energy in space and you as a separate energetic being. It's being and responding to everything. So again, I'm going to put some of those videos in the second half of this section, really with the idea as an energetic attunement opportunity for you, just to watch and let your body intuitively feel what you're seeing. Watch your breath. Watch what your focus does while you're watching the screen, and then watching the space around you, and then watching the screen, watching around me. Just watch how your body is tracking. And you may just find yourself slipping into flow state. Okay. So I've got some notes here. So we'll talk about if this energy starts to move through you and it's out of tune, your brain will think weird things, and you will behave in a particular way that will seem weird and won't seem healthy or congruent or coordinated. And that can make it really hard to be a contributing member to your relationship, your family, your community. It can make it hard to make it through the day, to satisfy some of the needs, our six major life needs, whether there's community, there's contribution, love and connection, and significance. And notice that significant to what? Significant as an offering to other things. So now we have non-dual, where you're feeling yourself as everything, but then right alongside non-dual is the world of duality, which is I'm over here, you're over here. Love and connection implies that we're separate and that we can actually find ourselves in connection and in relationship freely, with energy freely flowing. But a lot of times this energy and this kundalini is jacking us up, and it removes our ability to connect in flow state with others, even though part of our body really craves it, for us to feel content in the moment. Our body, to feel content in the moment, recognizes that it's actually here serving a purpose that it was designed for. And those of us who are maybe neurodivergent, divergent means diverse. We're different from a more neuronormal. And the neuronormal might have an easier time finding its purpose with the given options around. But if you're different, it might be a little bit trickier to find what your unique offering is, where when you actually combine with others in a way where the koshas are now regulated, there's a wave moving through you, you can feel the wave moving through the field, you can feel yourself in the murmuration or the schooling of fish, right? Where you're actually even in your unique weirdness, you are in the flow with others. And if you're neurodiverse, it might be trickier to find your artistic way in to contribute, to find the love and connection, find significance. Okay, so let's look at how some of the mechanics of how this energetic attunement works, because if the energy is blasting you all over the place, one thing I like to look at it is you're out of tune. If you're a guitar, you're out of tune. And we don't take a guitar to a healer to heal it if it's out of tune. We take it to a subtle energy mechanic and have it twist the little knobs so that the strings come into attunement. That's the same thing that's required for a body that's moving through a kundalini spiritual awakening. It's actually in need of attunement. It may be in need of some healing as well, but you can't heal a guitar back into tuning, back into tune. You can't heal a guitar into tune. It actually needs specific frequency-based complexity addressing integration of these 5 frequencies that in yoga are called the koshas. Somebody asked the other day if I made that word up. No, it's K-O-S-H-A. I did not make that word koshas. But when I started to do this work 15 years ago and was learning about these 5 different frequencies, they weren't described to me with the word kosha or in the yogic format. But then when I saw people's spontaneous movement into this vibrant, stable, content, growing, thriving life, when maybe they had come from a place that was very desperate and not happy, not thriving, I knew I was onto something, that I had stumbled across something that, of course, I didn't invent, but I had stumbled across something that was like, oh, this is really critical and really profound for a lot of people. So let's talk about the mechanics of what that looks like, and then we'll get into the energetic attunement video part after that. So energy, there's some energy down here in the sacrum, and so the energy then comes into the sacrum. It also comes into the feet, comes up from the foot, through the legs, into the sacrum, comes up to the other foot, right there, up through the legs, into the sacrum. Sweet. That's great. You got a lot of energy coming in here. And then it just builds up the sacrum like a big old battery, and it has to go somewhere. So some of the people I've been working with, their legs are shaking and their pelvis is moving all over the place. And uh, just like we get the image of somebody in an orchestra where they're up there like moving all over the place, and that may not be, well, aside. Okay. So energy is coming up here into the sacrum, and we're designed when the container is organized and the space is not only held, but it's contained and organized in such a way that it actually drives that energy right up through the spinal cord region. That's not happening with a lot of people right now. You're getting energized, but then it goes off this way or this way. You're all over the place. And life is representing that or looking like that. Your life may be all over the place, and it maybe just fly face down on the floor. So here's what it should look like. And look, you might actually start to recognize this image. Here, 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 right? Okay. So that's part of it, right? And then the way that I've heard it explained is there's two of these. They go, but I'm not going to draw it right now because when you start working with the mechanics of this, the mechanics are a little bit different. They're not running necessarily two waves coming up out of the sacrum. It's this one coming up, and then it comes back down. And then it goes back up. And then it comes back down. And then it goes back up and comes back down. So just stick with me here for a second. So let's look and see what that actually does. It allows the body to move a wave up through the spinal cord and back down, and then up through the spinal cord and back down, just like a double Dutch jump rope game where you see the two people holding the jump rope and you're keeping the waves stably moving back and forth, which keeps the energy efficient and coordinated and keeps your brain, that lower brain of yours, in flow state. And in flow state. Okay. Now, there's a lot of mechanics for how to do this. And there's a lot of ways that this can go wrong. When this goes wrong, say you were born and you had forceps birth. You had your head yanked out because you needed to, because otherwise you'd die in mom's birth canal. And so maybe you just have the doctor's hand like yanking you out. Okay. There's a whole condition all recognized by the pediatricians in Europe called KISS syndrome. KISS, long words, which stands for kinematic movement insufficiency due to suboccipital strain. Suboccipital is this region right here. Strain just means to yank the muscles. Kinematic means movement. So when you damage this part of the brainstem spinal cord muscular region, you damage the spiritual ability for that anatomy to manage a high voltage spiritual awakening experience. Does that make sense? So what that means is you damage this part right here, and you screw this up. And so your life starts looking like this because the energy isn't able to move up and then move back down. So this is how like a physical trauma at birth, or falling off of a bicycle, or getting in a rear ender in a car wreck, or falling off of a swing set as a kid, or in a motorcycle wreck, or a horse fall, or falling off a roof, anything like that, can cause issues with your ability to regulate the spiritual flow, a kundalini awakening decades later. So there may be a correlation between trauma at one point in life and later in life when you gain access to this huge amount of energy that's out here in the collective field, how your body has a tough time managing that. And so I like to look at it that way, is that this area may not necessarily need to be healed, but it may just be in need of a bit of coordination. Okay, so let's, do I want to say anything else about that? A&P. A&P means anatomy and physiology. So I want to talk about the anatomy and physiology of this field-centric kundalini awakening process. All the ways that it can go wrong, but ways that it can continue to go wrong if we get the story wrong, if we get the narrative wrong about what's happening. Our need to heal something that actually just needs to be tuned like an athletic event. Okay, and so I think that what I'm a big fan of is actually looking at this much energy moving through the body as an actual athletic endeavor. And when you approach it this way, the side effects, you start to coordinate the koshas that may be driving you crazy to look like a neurotic person and to feel like a neurotic person and have your life completely falling apart. And then because you've got lots of traumas that then need to be healed from. But healing from those traumas doesn't do anything for coordinating this energy that your highly sensitive nature is actually resonating with. So now let's go into the videos, and I'll talk more so that you can watch and just use these videos as a way to allow yourself to drop in and feel. So pretending that rather than something that needs to be healed at this point, in addition to maybe needing to be healed, just allowing yourself to feel yourself like a musical instrument that just through observing this and feeling the energy that you're witnessing, let your body take in what it's witnessing and just drop into that experience. Okay, next. All right, so one of the first things that I like to do as I'm watching this is notice the speed, as if we can watch things with a particular speed. And imagine that this is how his body finds its ability to move back into the human flock. The body actually needs to be able to match exactly the speed of the other humans from moment to moment. And this is how the body senses itself as everything. I'm not touching him, I'm not making any noise. He senses himself and his place, and basically what am I doing with my intention and my focus? And he's moving within this container that's just moving and changing from moment to moment. But he doesn't outpace it going too fast or too slow. How does he keep himself safe and in flow while we're moving together? Well, for instance, I like to use the analogy of the dog that thinks she's going to get hit by a stick and she tucks head, tucks tail. That's the trauma. And then if the dog stays there, that's now chronic trauma. But what's the internal experience of that? Like for me, it's just pure panic. Okay, so watch her body right here. She's tracking the speed of my focus. She can't see my hand, but she's tracking the speed of my focus and matching kind of the intensity. And this is where we want to go with this work. All right, so here's what seems to be critical. A critical observation, a critical realization here is she's responding to my focus. I'm not sending energy from my fingers into her, and it's not any kind of a puppetry here. I'm just using my focus, and she's doing something with her own focus inside so that she can feel, almost like feeling the yawn. You know, like when you yawn, you can feel it moving up through you. So she's sensing the same thing. And so here's what happens when we get hypersensitive or overwhelmed is we get blown around by other people's focus. And that's nothing to heal from, but that's something that when we learn this fact, we can start to play with it. We can take our own body back and our own boundaries back by learning to, with our own focus, as well, especially in tandem with a coach, an energetic, subtle energy mechanics coach that knows how to help you find the organ that runs your autonomic nervous system, which is what I'm just doing right there. That's up and down through the whole spinal cord and brainstem there, right? And so she's finding me in the collective field, but I'm separate, she's separate, and we're co-emerging as separate and unified. So she's figuring out how to stay in contact with all of this energy without somebody else's focus knocking her off. And this takes a lot of practice. This really is an athletic endeavor. She didn't get healed here. She actually has a specific set of practices, including connecting to somebody or with somebody like me who can help her find the specific anatomical locations, if you will, where she might have blind spots. And when there's blind spots, that leaves her open for somebody else's focus to come and kind of knock her off her center, to get triggered, for her to go subconscious into emotional reactivity or overwhelm. So this is how we learn to manage our highly sensitive system and body when we're co-emerging, when we are separate dualistic beings right alongside non-dual beings. We're out there messing around with the other muggles in Wizardryville, if you will. All right, welcome back. So that's another version of the story of what it means to be highly energetically sensitive, whether it's kundalini, spiritual awakening, or if I'm crazy and you're just actually neurotic. I don't know, this world gets pretty weird, and it gets pretty fun. But notice that she didn't fly all over the place. We were really working with our focus, her focus, my focus, because energy follows focus. And then focus also follows energy. So those are big things to be aware of. That I keep a little list of what I call small pages, and they're like these little one-liners for things that I need to remember as a highly sensitive, energetically reactive individual. And one of those is energy follows focus. Because when you just let the energy move through you, and you may have heard me say this before, and I've heard other teachers say, yeah, when the kundalini comes through you, just let it go. It'll do its own thing. It will not do its own thing. When you let it do its own thing, it's like letting a wild dog off the leash. It's all over the place, and it's not a very responsible thing to do to yourself or to other people. So energy, especially this high-powered energy that you might be saddled with right now or being whipped around by, when we address it as an athletic endeavor, if you will, which means it requires some kind of disciplined daily practice to help coordinate it. And there's these 5 koshas, and their 5 koshas are required to help you coordinate all of this chaos into breath, which brings it down. And the second kosha is the stretch, which starts to bring it up. And the third kosha is a vibration, which actually helps it contain itself. Vibration, just like us, where I'm vibrating to keep myself straight upright, balanced, actually requires a vibration side to side. That's the third kosha. Fourth kosha now goes from side to side and adds a little complexity, actually starts to open this figure 8 motion, which allows me to move forward, move back, and my heart actually starts to open so that I can manage and feel this kind of bliss thing while my body's keeping itself upright and relaxing, stretching the energy and balancing. Fourth kosha, fifth kosha is once I have all of those things now organizing and the heart's open, I'm able to keep myself safe and enthusiastic and inspired. Then that fifth kosha, then you may have heard me say before, comes through, and that's this what's called the soul frequency, and that really moves through and actually burns off all the stuff that isn't you, and the stuff that's remnant from past. So it could be past jobs and relationships and things like this. And now just think about, so people think about soul and running soul through, and it's just super blissful energy. But if you think about how do you actually get into that experience of this blissful soul experience? Well, something has to come through and burn everything off that isn't the soul. So then once that's burned off, where are you left? Floating in this blissful experience. But I really want to point out that something like or something that Adyashanti mentioned, that awakening is really not a pleasant experience. So there, and I would caution people from really trying to get to the soul experience. Because I think more the reality is there's a blissful soul experience when you just have the first kosha and you're being breathed. Like whatever this thing is that's running this whole earth-bound world human show, when you find that switch and you feel yourself being breathed and can be just content in that, that is a layer of bliss that's you really don't want out of. You're completely content in that. That's just the first kosha. And the second kosha, when you feel pure emotion running through you as you're being emoted, energy in motion, that's a whole nother layer of bliss. And then the third one, when you feel yourself actually being coordinated, when you find yourself in flow state, like in a dance step, dancing with somebody else or by yourself, like how blissful is that? That's just the first three koshas. Super, yeah, super blissful, and can be really painful in the process of coordinating those. So thanks everybody for watching. I recommend, watching videos like this of just sitting, allowing yourself to space out, watch this, finding somebody as like a good yoga instructor or a good, whether somebody that is really skilled in knowing these five koshas, regardless of whether or not they call them koshas, but they recognize there's mechanics to how to get yourself into flow state. All right. And then to keep yourself in flow state rather than just launching you up, maybe in a psychedelic driven experience, launching you up and then inevitably coming back down because it shows you what you can do and can get to, but the physiology isn't there to actually make that experience enduring. So thanks again for watching. More information about events that I have or ways to work with me or do this work maybe in your region, you can check down in the descriptions below. All right, you'll have a great day, week, month. And if you've got questions, if this works for you, if you got something out of watching the energetic attunement work and it makes sense, light bulb moment, ahas, I love to hear those. So maybe put those in the comments as well. Okay, now I'm out. See ya.